Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Expeditors Podcast, where we look at the logistics and freight forwarding industry through the lens of a global logistics provider. I'm your host, Chris Parker, and today's topic, high fashion freight. This week, it's Paris Fashion Week, where the world's greatest fashion designers show off their latest ideas to buyers, publishers, and retailers. Now, the pieces shown off can hold extreme value. So as a freight forwarder, how do we support French maisons or houses to get their products to customers worldwide? And what goals do they have as global brands? Joining me today from Paris is Global Account Manager Sophie Duquesnoy and District Manager of Paris, Mark Rached. Sophie, Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Chris. Very happy to go over this topic today with you.
Thank you, Chris, for having us.
It is my pleasure to have both of you. So I know this sounds like a really cool topic. I'm actually really excited to talk about this one today. But before we get into that, I wanted to get to know both of you first a little bit. So Sophie, starting with you, could you walk me through your career and how you got to where you are today? And what do you like about supporting these fashion maisons or these houses that you work with?
Yeah, I would say that I'm a pure baby of Expeditors. I'm 20 years with the company and just joining the family after high school. And I went through the different departments and learned a lot and joined the account management program in 2006. And it was really something that fit to me. It's a pleasure to work with the customer. It's really what fit to my personality with Expeditors. And I was all the time with retailer customer. And the nice thing to be an account manager at Expeditors is really that you have different customer and each time is different. Mm-hmm. You always learn. Always learn.
So then what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned from your time?
It's adaptability and resilience, I would say, through the different customers, different industry and different expectation. Everything is always new. You build each time with your new customer and you learn a lot with them on their supply chain approach, on their vision, and even on the company itself.
Fantastic. All right, Mark, your turn. Walk me through your career and what you do as district manager. What do you love about working with fashion houses?
So I've been with the company for 19 years. I started in the Middle East. So I've worked in different offices and I've been based in Paris since 2013. So my responsibility is to oversee the operational part as well as the development part in the territory of Paris. And I work a lot with Sophie and other stakeholders in the district to support our clients in the high fashion industry. And I've learned a lot because, obviously, Paris is the epicenter of high fashion in Europe and globally. So that interaction and that exposure taught me a lot. One thing I've learned, and most important thing, is no client has the same requirement. Never take things for granted. Always be proactive and very reactive. It's a highly demanding industry. People are facing a lot of stress, whether in the logistics or in the creative departments. They are all facing tough timelines and tough requirements. So we have to be there for our clients. And it's totally different industry from the other industries that we serve.
Cool. Well, with that, let's go ahead and dig in because I want to know more about these requirements too. But first things first, when you look at high fashion, how do you define it and what do these products and pieces look like? Mark, let's start with you.
High fashion is all about luxury and beauty and finesse and elegance. It's about products that everyone desires, but not everyone can afford.
It's a lot around all the design, the innovation, and the creativity that are brought by all those luxury designer. I think it's all around, like Mark mentioned, desirable product. It's a lot about that. And I think also the high value may attract also people, but the high value is really based on the quality and the long-lasting product, and also a kind of heritage of the different maison and the culture and the art that they want to put in their product to make them very attractive.
So when an event like Fashion Week comes around, what does it mean to the fashion world, to French culture?
It's a highly awaited event. whether in France or international. It brings a lot of attention, whether it is from the local or the international media. One reason for it is because it showcases the French creativity, inspires and sets the tones for other creators on what the fashion will look like for the coming season. So it's highly awaited, and it gets a lot of coverage from the media.
Yeah, it's a lot about branding. We want to be the leader on the luxury market. So all those maisons, that's really the time that they want to show the prestige from the French art. And that's their moment to shine, I would say.
All right. So Sophie, let's start with you for this one here. What kind of factors are drawing the most attention from high fashion brands today? What are they most concerned with nowadays?
Yeah, and just as a quick intro, for me it was important also to highlight just the revenue that has been generated last year for the global fashion industry. We are talking about 1.5 trillion last year. For me, post-pandemic, there is a change. The supply chain really rethink the priority for the fashion and luxury industry. Of course, looking for a more agile supply chain, and that definitely now integrate more sustainability approach into their business model. What we have seen also is that the younger generation are really expecting more transparency on the sustainability program that the different brands can have. This generation also creates a revolution in the speed up to the pace of the luxury industry. For me, there's two new fundamentals now in the for the industry is the value of time and the sustainability. Also really important is that they are expecting those maisons or those brands really to have like really an ethical governance that include also compliance. And if we are much more in a technical aspect, I would say everything that is also around the regulation and the customs regulation that we have. And we were talking about branding. For me, it's key for the high-end fashion brand. And this means that for them, they must achieve to have a branded supply chain. Because it's not only having product that desirable by people, but they need to have an excellence in the distribution. And this will go through the supply chain model.
I love that. Branded supply chain, as if each fashion maison does things in a very specific way. They've got their own style of moving their goods around. I think that's a really cool idea. Mark, what about you? When you work with your customers, what are the kinds of things that concern them or that they are really prioritizing right now?
High fashion customers are convinced that having an efficient supply chain is crucial for their development, making sure that their shipments and their products are moving in a safe environment and especially in a compliant manner. There are a lot of restrictions. There's a lot of regulations that surround some of the products, especially when we're talking about animal products or other origins that can have certain restrictions in certain countries. And when you're a famous brand, sometimes bad news hit the press really quick, and we want to make sure that the image is protected, and that is an important factor for the continuity of the brands.
So I guess then, how does the fashion industry engage with logistics, and what are the particular needs that it has to move these kinds of products?
So security is very important for our customers. They do feel that those products are recognized almost everywhere. And everybody wants to have them. And unfortunately, not anyone can afford them. And it is very important that the supply chain is secured from end to end. So that's the first requirement, reliability and the security of the supply chain. Another thing that is important is the visibility. Having an integrated supply chain, whether with your forwarder or with your service provider, is very important because customers are very anxious and very eager to receive their goods. The last thing you want is not knowing where they are, having them delayed, and having, at the end of the day, an angry customer who might go to another brand.
Yeah.
So I would say those are the most important factors. Sophie, anything to add?
I totally join what you said. The visibility and the security are crucial for those fashion supply chains. And also, I would say that as they are very integrated, because it's involved the design, then they have to do the sophisticated manufacturing. They use various of transportation plan. So everything has to really connect and be efficient in this regulation worldwide. It includes for them to adopt a very faster making process and do so urgently. There's no room to fail for this kind of product.
Right.
They really need to have the expectation of the customer for the product, but they have also to continue the unique experience until it's delivered to their final customer. Mm-hmm. And generally, you have, like Mark mentioned, we have to deliver the high value product sometimes in an hotel or for a trade show or for a shooting photo. So it has to be done really in a securely manner.
Sophie, you brought up a good point that they're delivering to either hotels, they're delivering to, sounds like a lot of temporary locations. These aren't just regular warehouses that they're bringing product to where it's going to be there for years and years. These kind of final destinations change constantly, so we need to be accurate with where we're delivering them to. That, with you calling out an integrated supply chain, leads me to believe that a fashion maison does not work with a lot of service providers. Is it common for a fashion maison to have its own delivery service under them?
No, they really rely on service provider.
Okay,
and they have generally a long-term relationship and confidence. We know that in this industry, it's a lot on reliability, and they expect that the service provider to cover all this, I would say, transportation and logistic part.
Right.
The Maison are working on everything that is design, creativity, innovation, and they partner with service provider to be excellent in the distribution of their product, covering those different aspects.
So they're working directly with their service providers quite frequently and very closely. My next question for that one is, what role does a freight forwarder have to play within this environment? Because I mean, usually we're the ones who are working with the service providers on behalf of our customers. So what do we do for a fashion maison?
I think it starts most importantly with understanding well their requirements. What do they need, and when do they need it, and how do they need it? And those requirements are very specific when it comes to high fashion. Not every transporter can commit to that. So they would need a lot of flexibility, a lot of innovation, and a lot of reactivity from their partners. The human factor is very important because the relationships that are built with our customers are relationships that last because they go through a lot of challenges. And that experience, and sometimes in failures and successes, creates a strong bond. And that bond is something that will last for a long time. So I think most importantly, the industry looks for reliability and an understanding of their sense of urgency. And also, very important to note that even though these are expensive products, doesn't mean you have to pay $1 million to move a bag or a shoe. There's a lot of constraints on cost, on sustainability, and you have to adhere to that. So there's a lot of requirements from the customers, and it takes time to understand those. And it's not just about moving a shipment from a point A to a point B. It's everything that happens before that shipment is ready. The products are ready, the planning of it, making sure it's moving in a secure way. Once it gets to its destination, final destination, all that compliance part, making sure it goes through customs in a very compliant way, but you have to make sure all this is ready before even the products move. So there's a lot of proactivity that the freight forwarder should demonstrate in order to make sure that that movement is successful.
You know, when I'm looking at the types of things that show up at Fashion Week or at, Met Gala, these outfits, dresses and suits, they take all sorts of different forms and shapes using all different kinds of materials to put them together. How hard is it to classify high-end fashion when you're trying to get your customs in order?
It's very tough.
Sure.
It's very challenging because these are not common products.
Yeah.
Those products have just been released. So there's no historical data that you can use. Classification, sometimes it can differ from the color, the size, whether it's high heels or small heels, it's 5 centimeters. So once those products are released, there's a lot of work to be done to making sure that each product has the right classification.
Mm-hmm.
The complexity is also because, like you mentioned, it's prototype or really unique piece. And then when you have to classify or to ask a consultancy to classify with those products, you need to provide with a lot of information. And that's the more complicated things to do, and can be classified differently depending on the market they are going. Let's say the US regulation and the Chinese regulation. When we are talking about fur or very specific, this is the very difficult part for the Maison for this unique piece to have the right classification. But generally, they got the support of the consultant person and with the customs authority. Again, when they know and they have confidence on the brand, on the name of the company, that they are working properly and they are doing, they work together with the customs authority to confirm what has been classified. But yeah, I would say the complex thing is the fact that can be a unique product that has no history and depends also on which market it will goes and the customs regulation for each of the markets based on the product itself.
It's an excellent question on classification because it will also bring out another aspect of the logistics and the day-to-day that we deal with, which is communication. Because once those products are made available, then you need to identify what is the right HS code, what classification will fit to that product. And that information usually is available with many people within the organization. So because you have to check what is the origin of the raw material, what is the percentage that is used from that particular raw material. So it pushes the forwarder or the customs broker to be very proactive, but also to be very reactive from the moment those products are made available to make sure that they capture and ask the right questions to every stakeholder within the organization. And sometimes it's more than one person, and sometimes it's in different locations as well. So it requires a lot of coordination when it comes to getting that information available.
Sophie, you mentioned like the younger generation now with their greater expectations from the fashion industry with transparency, with sustainability. Talking more about customs, what kind of compliance or regulatory challenges does high fashion face that requires so much of its attention right now? Like, is the industry changing or is the compliance changing?
Given the high value of those products, there's a lot of scrutiny when it comes to customs. In a sense, customs authorities want to make sure that those products are authentic, that they are what they claim to be in terms of the material that is used for production, and most importantly, the valuation of those products are correct. The biggest challenge is CITES. They want to make sure that they have the right licenses and the right documentation for that. You want to talk about that, perhaps, Sophie?
Yes, CITES is in fact regulation of the animals and species that are protected. My thought is that with a much more approach in terms of environment and protection, there is much more regulation on everything that is around animals, nature, and then it asks those high fashion brands to be much more compliant and to have awareness of what is able to be done or not anymore. If we take the example of, let's say, the California, you cannot send some crocodile belt because they are totally under protection. So that will be in this sense where they had to be much more compliant than before. I'm not sure since when does exist those CITES regulation and the protection around the species and protected species, but definitely it has an impact on the high fashion industry to be more cautious and more compliant on what they were using as raw material.
Yeah.
They cannot let the designer do everything that they want to do like before. Now they have also to be compliant with those protected or those new regulation on the environment.
You know, I'd recently learned that fashion labels want to be able to provide they want to make their products available to, you know, the market within 48 hours of like announcing or of like releasing, you know, a certain piece or showing it, presenting it to the public. With speed to market being part of this luxury experience, how are they making changes to better meet their goals, but then also still keeping, you know, this luxury experience available to its customers?
Those fashion brands have made sustainable development really a strategic priority since years now. It's true, they want to deliver their customer or their stores or give a very VIP experience in 48 hours. And then they have to be also neutral carbon. That's an objective, but they have to find some ways, I would say, to minimize or to decarbonize their supply chain, and particularly when they are using the air mode of transport. So yeah, there is some initiative that has been done. We can talk about the SAF fuel. I'm sure that you have heard about that, but this is help to buy biofuel and then to reduce the global CO2 footprint on their overall movement by air. So they have done top priority, but it's not only on the transportation. They work also and they have a very high targets in terms of sustainability, and they work also on everything that is packaging. They want to make sure also that all their production sites can be carbon neutral or very high quality environment. And they develop a program around the environment. And they have the kind of objective like for 2030 to have 100% of their new products will result from sustainable raw materials. The wine and spirit sector worked a lot because we have seen even this year with the climate and the water that was missing, they try in the vineyard to use also some sustainable way to reuse water and minimize also the consumption of water in their vineyard.
And one thing is also important that every customer is challenging us for the most sustainable solution. Sometimes it might not be there, but what we can see is they are always on the lookout on what is the best way and most eco-friendly way to move their products. This might be asking us to use electric trucks, asking for different modes of transport that can meet their requirement. But there's a lot of work to be done to attract also the younger generation who is very self-conscious and conscious about the impacts of global warming and are looking for products that are more sustainable and eco-friendly. We're still not there yet. There's a lot of work to be done, but it's still a challenge given the fact that you have this speed to market that the product needs to be available as soon as they are released.
So with high-end fashion products, we're looking at one single item, some with long histories, and therefore tracking is important. What is the latest with keeping these high-value shipments secure?
I would say the most innovative thing that is happening today in the market is real-time visibility, understanding and knowing exactly where those products are. in real time. And that would reassure our customers, and but also it will reassure their customers, knowing that at any point of time they can locate their products or their purchased goods. And it's not about just the standard visibility. There are solutions being put in the market, whether it is packaging, whether it is tracking devices, and those are becoming very handy and very much used and consumed by the high fashion industry.
We have a team that is trained and skilled to orchestrate those high-value cargo movements. In fact, the concept is we never take our eyes off your shipment. So for that, it will be a human, and it will be, like Mark mentioned, those innovation with the device. But this is definitely monitoring 24/7, and it can be around, depends on what are the requirements and what is the type of product, but can be security escort, can be a corridor routing that is agreed with the police, can be overpacking with sealed, not seeing what is the kind of product, and using those cargo sensor, we can have a real-time data, and you can even have that on the map of your phone at any time. You can see exactly where your cargo or where your product is. So we have a kind of package of different security measures that can be deployed, depends on the expectation and maybe the high value cargo. But it's a lot about a team orchestrating everything around that.
All right, last question for you guys here. We've been talking a lot about high-end fashion, the luxury experience, the specific needs of this industry. Why is it important to know how these kinds of products are moved? Like, what does it matter? Why should any of this be important to the retail customer, the common folk, as it were? This whole world, the high fashion world, is inaccessible to me, right? I'm never going to buy one of these things. Why should I care about what we're talking about today? It's a pretty deep question.
Well, I would say it's very interesting to see the standards that are in place because of that industry when it comes to security, when it comes to moving shipments end to end in a secured and compliant way. They set the standards really high when it comes to customer requirements. That would be inspiring for others to see how this is being done. And the amount of resources and efforts being put behind. Whenever you see a nice bag in the display, it's not just someone who grabbed it and put it there. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of people who invested, who worked tirelessly to get this bag in display. Might not interest a lot of people, but it is also an industry that has an impact of $1.3 trillion on the global economy. There's a lot of people who work in that industry and gain their living because of this. So even though the products are not very accessible to the common people, but it's still a very important driver in the economy.
It's the French prestige that is showing there with this industry. And we need to keep in mind that they create something. We are talking about craftsman, artisan. We are talking about heritage of the savoir-faire. There is a lot of French word, but that's what we want to show. And when we have this fashion week, is to show what's France, what Paris, and what the different fashion brands are still able to create as heritage of value and art, and we need to keep that. And that's still something that is important for the world, also this fashion industry, because it attracts a lot of people around that, and also it generates a lot of pride, but also those high fashion industry, they hire a lot of people. And they train those people also. They even create a program, and it's open to everyone. And they really want everyone to have his success in the high fashion. It can be any people. And then you have a mix of celebrities that are now, and like we take the example, but we can have celebrities be the edgery of this brand. And so for me, it's much more like a kind of recognition of the French art, French culture, French heritage, but in the high fashion. It can be with the music, but we are talking about the high fashion. And everybody has to wear something every day. So,
yes, thank you, France, for everything that I wear. No. Well, Sophie, Mark, thank you so much for the time that you took today to chat with me about this. This was really a lot of fun to talk about.
Well, really enjoyed that discussion. Thank you for having us, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you've got questions or want to learn more about today's topic, check out the show notes for more information. And before you go, make sure you're subscribed on whatever podcast app you're using so you won't miss the next episode. To learn more about Expeditors, you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or simply visit us at expeditors.com. Take care, and I'll see you next time.